Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
My name is Karen Saunders. I'm with the Big Country Master Gardeners, and we are an extension of Texas A&M. And through them, we have been given the privilege of taking extra classes in fields that we are interested in. I chose the field of Firewise landscaping because of where I live in the country and things that might happen to me. And then I realized that a lot of my friends lived in the country also, so thought it might be a good choice. I am not one of those PowerPoint persons. I do not know how to walk and chew gum at the same time. Therefore, we are going to do it the old-fashioned way. We have a book. While book learning is good, I think that hands-on experience speaks more than the books do. So I'm going to ask for participation from you from time to time, and I hope you don't mind. If you do, just shake your head and I'll pass to somebody else. How many of you live in the country, quote unquote? Okay. And the rest of you, I take it, live kind of on the edges and in town here? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, this book, The Ready, Set, Go, that you have on top of your pile is good for both situations, or neighborhoods, I should say. One of the, what's the word I want to use? Problems with the Firewise is that we have neighbors that might impact us. I know where I live out off Elmdale Road, I have grass 5 feet high on 3 sides of me. I have grass in my yard this tall because I'm afraid of it. Been there, done that, don't want to do it again. And when we're talking about this Ready, Set, Go and the whole class, it's not based on you and I alone, it's based on your neighbors also. Because your neighbors are every bit a part of you. In fact, in class, they taught us that community doesn't mean the city of Abilene. Community means what's next to you and further out as you go, and that encompasses everybody. But your community can be considered your next door neighbors on either side of you in all 4 directions. The first thing they discuss is defensible space. And if you look in here, they will give you on page 4, directions for defensible space. And it shows you how far out you want to get from your house and then from your house out to the road. Now for some of us that may not be possible because we have implements, we have buildings, we have other things in the way, so to speak. So you have to work around those. The wildlife landscaping, the landscaping is a little bit of a misnomer in that it doesn't mean planting flowers. That's addressed in a whole different episode. But what we're discussing here today is keeping your yard and your areas clean around you, and in that case, defensible. I don't know how many of you depend on the volunteer fire departments, but one of the things they've asked us to do is encourage you to go visit your volunteer fire department and get to know the people around you or in that area, because some of those firemen may be your neighbors and they can make suggestions for your area. For your defensible space, you have, some of you may have, or you have seen the nice Manseret that goes over the yard where you drive under and it says the Browns. Depending on how high that is, that can be a problem because the fire department can't get their truck through it. And they're going to have to know the best way to get onto your property. And sometimes if they can see a way to do it, they'll take out a fence. And but it's nice if you go to your volunteer fire departments and give them a drawing of your area, and that will let them know where the easiest access is to your property. And even though they have access to the digital maps and they can see it if they call it up, Not all of those are up to date, and you may have made changes to your property since the last time that was updated. The other thing that could be on there is where you have tanks, if you have any of them, and fire hydrants, if you have them, and the size of the spigot on it, because they need to know what size it is for their hoses. So if you go to your local volunteer fire department, ask them what it is they would like for you to have information for them. They can give you that information if you don't already have a diagram of your property already set up. And it's one of those things, they may never need it, and you hope that they never need it. But if they do, at least they've got it, and they're ready and you're ready. The other thing they need to know about is gas tanks on your property, oil tanks on your property, things that could explode. Because a lot of times, depending on which direction the fire is taking, if they think it's gonna go to those explosive materials, they may try to catch those before they catch the house. Because of the explosion is not gonna do anybody any good. And it's gonna hamper them from keeping the house safe or any of your other properties out there. We had a lady that came to one of these presentations, and she said that she got a call from her neighbor to come home quick, that the wildfire was headed for her property. When she got there, the fire truck was sitting there watching her hay barn burn. And what she had done is she'd taken one of those Connexes and had filled it full of hay the day before.
Oh, no.
And she just ran up to the fireman. She says, "Why aren't you doing something? Why aren't you putting it out?" And he says, "Ma'am, the minute that smoke got into that hay, it was gone anyway." He says, "Now, we have enough water on this truck to defend your house or put out the fire on your hay. But if that fire swings around and comes to the house, we're all out of luck. So we have to pick and choose." And she was very upset about this. And the next town meeting she went to, she voiced it very well that she was not happy with the way the volunteer fire department had handled it. And they explained to her why, the fireman was there and explained to the city hall why they had done it that way. About a year later, she runs into this fireman, and he said, "I want you to know that by you going to the town hall meeting, or city hall, whichever you prefer," he said, "You speaking the way you did got us a bigger truck with more water." So he says, "Don't be afraid to go to those hall town meetings, and if you have a complaint, voice it. But voice it with something that's positive." So he said, that way we're better contained for the next fire. The other thing that we worry about is our animals. The first year I was here, I think we got here 2010 and 2011, they had a big fire up in Amarillo area. 2,000 head of cattle gone. And the majority of them were gotten by smoke. And one of the things in the class they taught us is that if at all possible, have your fields broken up and have an exit gate, and teach them how to use the exit gates. In other words, they know what the open gate means. They can go from pasture to pasture. I know in some farming instances, that's what you do, is that you have those pastures where you're letting the grass grow over here while they're mowing this grass down over here. So let them know about those gates so they know what they are and they're not afraid to use them. Because if that gentleman or those people that were in that area had gates that they could have opened, 2,000 head cattle on the roadway probably wouldn't have been a good idea, but the alternate was they lost all their cattle, and that is a big bill to deal with. Not that we care about the money, it's the aspect of what you've lost, and that's a heartbreaker. So for defensible spaces, and the main item that we're talking about is the ready, set, go in creating your own wildfire action plan. And that's going to start on page 5. And you can read down through there. I'm not going to go point by point just to let you know. But there, I have questions for you. How many of you have ever been in a wildfire before, or a fire of any kind?
Been in one?
In one or affected by one? Yes. What
Yes.
was?
I was in the mesquite heat fire.
You were in the mesquite heat? What?
My home was saved, thank God, my home was saved, but it came within 40 yards of the house on the right side of our driveway. And, my neighbors around to the back of the mountain lost everything, lost 7 families. And then one down on Hidden Valley, we're on Hidden Valley, and then one down there, and one down in front of in their field, lost their home. just couldn't believe it, how the fire jumped around and how the Texas A&M forest fire, people came and watched for over 2 weeks after that happened and putting out fires in our neighborhood.
Crazy.
It was amazing how the wind and the fire jumped around so much.
With that experience, is there anything that you can tell the audience that watch out for, do this, do that, that would have maybe?
Well, I've been to another class like this before since then, and the one thing is keep those trees trimmed, keep them away from your house, 30 foot or more. That's the main thing, because once it gets up in the trees, it is hard to put out, they said. And luckily, I didn't lose any of my trees just right near my home, because they had been trimmed back the year before. So that's one thing that I would say, keep those trees trimmed far away from your house. And bushes too. Bushes
Yeah.
can be a hardship on the law, on your home.
In the other brochure that I've given you, which is Firewise Landscaping in Texas, that gives you some direction that way, so that you also know some of the plants to have around your house. You don't want a cedar tree close to the house. You don't want some of the oilier plants, the annuals or the perennials that are a little bit on the oily side near the house. You don't want a lot of mulch up next to the house, because when embers fly, you don't know where they're going. And the fire that we had the other day, I think it declared kind of northwest of town. I don't know how many of you saw that big cloud.
Sparkler fire?
Yes, sparkler fire. There you go. The guy didn't give me a name. He just said what happened was that the sparkler fire, they got it out, or so they thought. That afternoon, the wind came up and it found a hot spot and set it off, and it burned the rest. We're thankful that it was just field, no houses, no people involved or what have you. But that's what happens when an ember gets out of control. You have no idea where it went, and you got it right here, you put it out, but you didn't see the one that's growing over here, and it can come up hours later. I'm from Alaska, and we have tundra fires, and the tundra is it's a mossy type stuff, and the fires have been known to go way down in the ground and just simmer. And a pilot was flying in the middle of the winter over part of the tundra that had burned the year before. And he's got a fire burning up through all this ice and snow. We're talking about 3 feet, 4 feet ice and snow. Big old patch, all burned out and what have you. And they had to go back and do an analyzation of it to figure out why it happened. But that's it, because it went down through that moss. It was smoldering under there, and then somehow it got a breath of air. They don't know where it came from because it was covered, but it started burning back up. And when that stuff gets hot enough, it will melt the ice and snow around it, and fire, as we know, creates its own weather, its own wind, and its own dryness. So it will dry it, and it doesn't have to be in a medium like that. It can be your mulch, it can be the hay, it can be in your field. In this case, they have no idea how they missed it, because everything was out, it was all cold, it went around, and they made sure that they didn't find anything, but then here it comes again. So that's why one of the issues in here is keeping your house and your areas clean. Not the mulch up against the house, not the trees, not the plants, but also look up. You start from the top and go down, and you know how you've got the creases in your roof. You can get needles, leaves, other items in there that can burn. One of the things they showed us also is that on the ends where you have the air that can get into the attics and what have you, the screens on those are no longer metal. The majority of them are plastic. And if you get an ember up against that, it can melt the plastic and then get in through and burn from the top down. There are, and the book covers it, but it tells you some of these things to look out for in keeping your areas clean. They also have the Get Set, which you know it's coming. It may or may not get to your area, but it's one of those things that I think we get so used to knowing that you turn the iron off, that you turn the stove off, that you do things on the inside of the house, but you need to also consider what you need to do on the outside of the house to keep things ready. I know my husband gets on me because I've got hose strung out all over the yard. But if I have to take time to take it off that roll when I see something coming my way, I'm losing time. And I'm borderline paranoid of it because of those 3 fields that I've got. And oh, did I tell you on the other end of the block are 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 fireworks stands. And across the street, I've got a 4th one. So where I am, depending on which way the wind's blowing, and fortunately for me, 90% of the time we got a south-southwest wind, and they're on the north side. But as it just so happened on 4th of July, the wind was coming from the northeast. So if it had come back on that, it would have come back right through my property and gone out. I also live on a country road that's caliche, and the bar ditches are full of grass, except mine, thank you. And, but it's also a place where I went out, when I was out cleaning mine out the other day and mowing it, I found 5 cigarette butts. Now, I was lucky because I didn't have any fire from it. But it's also because I've kept it down, and what moisture's gone has gone in there and has kept that green. But the reason I keep it down is because trying to catch a creeping fire is a whole lot easier than trying to put out that field fire that's coming from there, because you don't know what embers have gone aloft. Because some of that stuff will fly, some of it will not. They say that cedar can go over 5 miles. So when you've got something like that. Now, here I don't have that. I'm surrounded mostly by mesquite. And I've never experienced mesquite fire, so I have no clue if those embers would fly that far. When you're preparing the house, they give you a checklist on doing the house. That's on page 6. And it tells you about shutting your windows, removing flammable window shades, shut off the gas meter, but leave your lights on so that they can see the house. Because when you get a real heavy smoke going through there, they've kind of got to feel their way going through, because if they don't know where the house is because you've given them a plan, or they've been able to look it up, they're not sure. So that way they've got a light to guide them, so to speak. One of the things that they have also asked, and this is something you might want to put on your chart, is I happen to have a septic system. Not all people out in the country do, I don't think, but I do. And they said that, what was the name of that fire that was...
Like the Eastland one?
No, it wasn't Eastland, it was the one 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, I don't know.
It was the lake fire, whatever that one was. They lost 3 fire trucks in septic tanks.
In septic tanks?
Not completely in them, but stuck them enough. They went through the leach field and sunk. And so that put 3 fire trucks out of commission because the leach, it wasn't marked. So if you have a septic system and you know where your leach field is, put up a sign of some kind. And I mean, it may look dorky, but the end result is not pretty. So then what they had to do is they had to get another truck or a tractor in there to pull them out so that they could get back on their way again. And a couple of them, I guess they had to wait until the fire was put out before they could even get in there and get them. Your outside checklist, like I said, the propane tanks, exterior lights, your attics and your ground vents, and then if you're trapped, they give you survival tips. The object is we don't get trapped. And speaking of trapped, they talk about ways out. When you are going home today, if you live in town, it may be a no-brainer, but if you're out in the country, look around. They say find 3 ways out. If you can only find 2 ways out, it's better than the alternative. But a lot of times it may mean that you may have to drive through your own fence. And it's going to tear up your car, but you may not have a choice. And it's one of those that it's just nice to know. And in fact, when you go to a building, that's why the exit sign, so you know if you're in here, this is a building you're not familiar with, what would happen if, how do I get out of here? The exits are listed. The exits may not be listed on your property per se, but in your mind, you know where they are. You've already made up your mind where that exit's going to be and how to get out. In the house, we've got, hopefully most of us have 2 doors that we can, if we can't go out one, we can go out the other, we can go out the window. There's your 3 ways out. So they ask you to consider those things too. Oops. Now then, when you get ready to leave, they tell you to go early. Don't wait, well, it's 3 or 4 more miles away. I'm not gonna worry about it until it gets closer. By the time it gets closer, you may have all kinds of fire trucks, you may have looky-loos, you may have all kinds of things blocking you from getting out of your own neighborhood. So you don't want to wait, and that's what happened to several of those people in the fires in California. They lost several because it either wasn't close enough, some of them said, I'm gonna defend my own space, and they didn't make it. And it's not worth it in the long run. Leave as early as you can. The other item that they may or may not discuss is you have your medicines, your papers, and anything else that you think is of value that you can grab at the last minute, or at least have it ready to grab. One aspect of this is if you have a child or parent or even yourself, you know what smoke's going to do to you if you have lung issues. You don't want to wait around for that to get there. And because smoke travels for miles, that's why they tell you to keep your doors and windows closed if you have health issues, because you can't afford to get that into your lungs. So if you have people at home, have friends, call them, say, hey, I can't get back to the house quick enough, can you go get my mom, my child, my whatever, and get them out of there. Because some of the teenagers left at home, I don't want to go shopping with her, she's no fun, I'm staying home. They may have issues and they've got their headphones on, they're watching TV, nobody knows what's going on. Somebody needs to alert them they've got an issue. They give you a list of what to take, your emergency supplies to have, for how long you want to have them. And I'm going, this isn't going to work for me. I have a dog in the back of my vehicle, and there's no place I'm going to be able to put all these items that they're asking for. Another thing to consider, what would you do if? Where are you going to be able to carry these items? And if not, do you have another place that you can put them? One of the audience members in one of the other classes that I had said that they already had a storage unit, and they just took all of the things that they thought they were going to need, what if, and put it in that storage area. If you've got something like that, or you've got a friend who's got a shed that they wouldn't mind if you put some stuff in. And likewise yourself, if you're in a position where you can help somebody else do that. And then we get to the animals. I've been interested in llamas for several years, and I get magazines and I get books on them and everything else. And one of the things they said for your horses, llamas, any of those animals, put your trailer in a to-go position. In other words, have it so it's ready to pull out of there at a moment's notice. Take time to train the animals, even the dogs. Because I know a friend of mine hauled her dogs in her cattle trailer a lot. But she took them in there and made sure that they were comfortable being in there, that was their second home. And any of your animals that you think that would benefit from that, take them out and train them how to get in there. Because when the episode hits, everybody is going to go nuts emotionally. Because, oh my God, it's 3 miles away. That feeds into the animals. The horse says, me, get in there, you gotta be kidding me. She's all upset and everything's wrong. She's mad, I don't wanna do this. And you're fighting to get the animals in there, you're losing time. And in that regard, they tell you also that the human mind, when it gets hit with issues like that, freezes. And you've got, should I call my husband? Should I call the fire department? Where are the kids? Where's this? Where's that? Your mind is loaded. And surprising enough, the first thing they tell you to do is grab a bottle of water and drink it. Because it gives your hands something to do instead of doing one of these numbers. It gives you time to think, and it also wets your brain. The majority of us run on the fine edge of dehydration anyway. Most of us don't drink enough water. And if you don't drink enough water, you're not thinking clearly for some things. So they say while it seems counterintuitive to grab a glass of water, bottle of water, something to drink, it gives you time to stop and focus on what you need to do. In the back of this, we have a list for my personal wildlife action plan. And it gets your out-of-state contacts, your work, your school, your other, whatever it is you need to write down. Because they say if you have this put somewhere, it doesn't have to be this size. It can be on your bulletin board, your refrigerator. It can be wherever it's close to your phone or that you can run up to. I say phone because I remember the one on the wall. But when you've got the one on the wall, the one in your pocket, at least you know where this is. And it tells you your order of contacts to make. Because the school and a lot of the other agencies are already going to be alerted that we've got a big fire out there. Keep the kids there until you're told otherwise. Don't let them out. Because some of your teenagers with cars are going to run home. Wait on that issue, because you may be more of the problem than you would be otherwise. But like I said, this gives you a list of places to call, things to do, and it also allows you to make your own notes on here. So book learning is good. That's how we learn, is by reading books, being taught from books, and even being taught from this. But practical experience and other things that would affect our lives individually are also just as important, and that's why the notes. This may be fine, this may be a good guide, but that's all it is things that they thought at the time that they put this together. But they also didn't think about other things that would be affecting you. So this is where you put in there what you need to know. And if it's not long enough, get another sheet of paper. But it gives you a place to go to get your mind gathered, to know where you're going to go. Because like I said, when it first hits it, it's on the way, your mind freezes up, because it's human nature. You want to get all of your bases covered, and there's not enough time. You've got to pick and choose. And this gives you your pick and choose choice. So if you want to put it down there so that you know what you've got to do first, last, and foremost. Now, if it's 8 or 10 miles away and they say it's headed in your general direction, you've got some time. But like that lady was downtown Abilene shopping, and her neighbor called and said the fire's headed for your place. If that friend of hers hadn't seen it, she'd have come home to nothing. And the other thing that the firemen did is they had one of their workers drive the horses over to the other side, which was upwind of where the fire was, because that smoke will kill the animals quicker than the fire would. So that it's true for humans also. We can deal with smoke a little bit better than the animals can, but if you don't know how much they've been exposed to, and you don't get some help for them fairly quickly, and that's why you'll find a veterinarian on one of these, because you may need to call them and let them know you've got issues. But in line with the animals, if you have a place where you've got friends, they were looking for people from the mesquite fire to put the animals out here at the fairgrounds. That's one place to put it. If you've got somebody else that can take your animals, ask them if they can come get them even, because you may have other issues that you need to take care of at the house. But these are the book gives you a guide as to what they suggest. But you might get to thinking while you're driving down the road, you know, that's a good idea, but here's something else that they might not have put in here. So that's what you want to do, is you want to put your own information in here, your own ideas, and share them with friends and neighbors. And we had one of our master gardeners who was living next to a guy who didn't care what his yard looked like. He had tall grass and what have you. And this guy was worried because he knew that they had fireworks in the neighborhood going to have fireworks over the 4th of July. And he went and asked the guy, he says, hey, it's none of my business, but have you ever considered the thought that with all the fireworks out here, you might get a fire here in the yard and it might affect all of us? No, he hadn't thought about it. And so he offered to help mow his lawn, to get it down to where it was fighting weight, so that they could possibly control it if it did get out of control. But a lot of your neighbors just don't care because nothing ever happens. And I think we get lost in that thought sometimes. It never happens here, it never happens to us. It's always them out there. But don't bet on it. And that's why it's a good idea to, even if you're in town, just, and one of these has a inventory sheet that you go around and you walk around your house and you see things here in town or out of town that what would happen if. Because what they have is it can be a domino effect. That ember can hit that dry grass, which is next to the load of firewood, which is next to the tree, which leads to the other dead grass, which is over by the house. So you get that domino effect. So things that you need to look for are, again, what if I got one? What if there were embers? Where would they fly? What would be the outcome if they got that close? So take your own inventories. And granted, some of the trees that were there were planted well before you ever bought your house. If you're not sure what you want to do, you might get with an arborist and ask them what they would recommend about either trimming the tree, because some of these trees you never trim, you just never trim them. Now the power company does, they go out and shear them off. They don't care whether the tree lives or dies, because we don't want to lose lights, we don't want that arc and spark to catch fire to the tree, which in turn goes down the neighborhood. So for those people, they're going to go and arbitrarily just cut it. But if you can get an arborist to come in and take a look at what you might have and say, let's take out these limbs here, let's lower this, and not make it look like it was sheared, because when the power company comes in, meow, and they don't bother to take the time to round them and make them look nice so that they are aesthetically pleasing to the eye. This is for safety measures. So that's another consideration, is what you want to do with those trees. And again, look at the flowers around your yard. I've got gravel around my place. Mainly because of that issue. I live in a modular, and they'd be gone in a heartbeat. But I've got that around there, and the gravel around there, because go out and wet it down and you're not going to worry about it near as much. I've got another place where I use mulch heavily because it's out and away from the house, but I've got plants that would die otherwise without the mulch. So it's just, you have to pick and choose in some cases what you want to do around the house. Again, that's discussed in your defensible. And in the back here, we've got two of these, my personal wildfire action plan, and they've got one for the ranchers and the farmers in the very back, that also gives you direction as to who all you would call. And you'd be amazed, Texas Forest Service, if you're in a wildland urban interface and you're on the edge of town, but you're close enough that you might be near a Forest Service, they have firefighting capabilities in most, if not most areas. So they're going to be wanting to know if you see something coming your way too, because it's going to affect them. These agencies are heads up. They know from 8 o'clock in the morning to 5:30 at night what's going on, because they've got people that check these all day long. So they're heads up on this. However, they put the name down, their name down, and you can put the number, because this is for everybody. This came from Texas A&M and the Forest Service, and it goes statewide. So you want to put in your own local phone numbers for this. It may seem counterintuitive that you're going to go to the extension office. Well, if you've got livestock, you're going to want to have some place to put them. That would alert them that you've got an issue, and they can put out an all points bulletin that if they've got people out there that can come help you, at least bring the livestock in. Because I know that for the mesquite, they were asking for people if they could come and get animals. And I had a couple of my friends that she had four burros, and chickens galore, and ducks and geese and what have you, and she had to leave. The burros she got taken out of there. Most of the birds, there was no way she was going to catch them. She was lucky the fire didn't get to her place, and she had very little, if any, smoke, but it was just over the rise from her, but it was headed that way, and they were able to stop it at that line. But it's, she, like I said, she got somebody to come get the burros, because she'd never given it a thought that they'd ever have a fire there. So she just didn't have the equipment available to haul them out of there. And there's only so much you can get in the Suburban. And burros aren't one of them. Okay?
You'd be surprised.
Yeah. Well, now I know they can do llamas. I know they can do llamas. Because they teach them to get in there and push so that they can stay in there. A friend of mine had a good old-fashioned station wagon, and she got one in her station wagon. But that llama liked to go because she got it as a baby, and because it was sickly, it had to go to the vet all the time. So it got used to riding in the back of her station wagon. And as an adult, she got in there, she just got down, got in there, and pushed right in and says, "I'm ready, let's go." And apparently she liked the vet because she didn't have a problem with him and she always wanted to go. So that being said, I would entertain questions, suggestions, or experiences.
Do you have suggestions for plants? I was looking through this one book, the landscaping, and it says to pick like the high moisture content plants for fire resistance. I see like different zones to plant in, but like do you know some good plants?
Yeah,
for
cactus.
Different zones?
You want high water, there they are. No, I think that, I was thinking that under landscaping, they had discussed which ones of those to do. But that may be another list that I didn't bring. But they get down here and they say on page 4, it says acceptable in the first 10 feet, 20 to 30, and 30 and beyond. And they give you somewhat of a design of what to watch for. And for those of you in town, you may not have that defensible space. But it's one of those, that's the challenge for you to go home and look and see, what can I do to maybe defend this if I had to. Most of us don't have those kind of plants, I don't think, that we worry about, that have the oils in them. Most of your perennials and your annuals don't have that issue, but your shrubs and your trees do. So that would be something, yes.
How do you know if a plant has a high moisture content or can withstand higher temperatures? Is there something to look for on their little label or anything?
Yes, look on the label that you have. The other thing is, if you have a question, thank God for Google, because back in my day, we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have Google. And, but you can always look that up. And again, before you buy, talk to your nursery person. Now, the people with the professional nurseries have a little bit better idea than like Lowe's, Walmart, and Home Depot. Because not all of them have people with a floral background. So they may or may not know, but they have the Bible. I mean, I kid you not, that book's gotta be about that thick, that they can go to. You can also Google. But that would be another thing. Go around your house and look. If you've got woody stems, wood burns. But some of those woody stems maybe have more moisture in them than you know. And you would be okay. Yes, ma'am?
Didn't you just say that cedar is hazardous?
It is.
John, how do you
It
really
is.
Cedar is basically explosive in a wildfire.
And what's its formal name? Arborvitae or something?
I don't know off the top of my head. But when you look it up, there are several types of cedar, but cedar in and of itself is explosive. And the oils in it are just,
A lot of the other style trees are, very bad.
pines,
Pines,
Cedar,
cedars, that sort of
firs.
stuff. They have a lot of the oily sap that's really flammable. Juniper.
Oh yeah, that's what the mosquitoes are.
and yes,
I went to the computer yesterday out of curiosity and did some checking on that as to what is combustible and what isn't. If you go in there, you will find different plants and trees and shrubs that will automatically just, burst into flames. And they're differently in different locations because they gave me a list like from the Florida aspect of it, from the California of the trees and some of the plants are identical, but then there's a little bit of variety. And I was trying to find something for this area, but we're kind of in the middle, which is more brighter. So I'm pretty sure there is another list in there, but I didn't continue searching. But I did give you a lot of this is everything, trees, shrubs, plants, grasses, anything and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that so many of these that we in turn, being Master Gardeners, we encourage you to get, but for fire-wise safety, you know, we have to be conscious of where we plant them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the trees especially, that's
Yes.
the one thing. And trees for another aspect, wind damage. Yes,
I've got a list of Firewise plants at home somewhere. I will make sure that gets onto the Master Gardener website, so.
We could also email it to everybody if they have their email
Yeah.
address.
Thank you.
It may take a day or two to find it.
Yeah.
We'll get it out to you.
in California, they had this beautiful, beautiful community. We're talking back in the 50s, 60s, somewhere in there. And wildfire came through, burned down the whole neighborhood. They rebuilt it. And they put back everything that they had planted before. And their houses back then, because they liked that adobe style with the tiled roofs and what have you, they were shake roofs. They were using shake roofs. So they put the shake roofs back on, and they went on their merry way. And a lot of your California fires are predictable every 3 to 5 years. There goes the neighborhood again. After the third one, they took time to find out why they kept losing the neighborhood. And the insurance company said, you figure it out or we're not gonna insure anymore. So they went down through everything that they had and looked. And first of all, the shake roofs had to go. The insurance company said that. So then they went and got the adobe tiles, not the shakes. So that was one thing they got. They decided to do more brick than wood, so that was all right. They got it all down, and finally, the one area that they had that the fire seemed to come from, they really couldn't remember what had been there for a while. But then somebody remembered that there was something wrong with the landscape. They didn't want to put anything there, so they put in cedar trees because they were so pretty. Then when the fire department, they even brought the fire department in to do, what do they call it, assessment of what they thought might have been part of the problem. And the first thing he did point to was those trees. He said cedar because it will spew embers and they can go 5 miles or more, because they had it in their little community, but it went down the hill because the embers went that way. So they finally figured out it was the cedar trees that were the big cause of it, so they put something else in there. But it's one of those that we take for granted sometimes, some of the things we've had there, but it's what we've had, it's what we're used to, and we want to put it back because it was pretty at the time. But Grandpa's oak tree that's standing up against the house, that in the first high wind is going to come down, take the whole house out, you got to rethink some of these. And it's just the way the world goes. Now then, I gave you the embers of beware, the Firewise landscaping, you've got the ready, set, go. And my suggestion is read through these, and after you've gotten the information out you want them, if you don't want to use them as reference materials, would you please be so kind as to drop them off at the library or somewhere else where somebody, even some of the homes or anywhere where you think that someone else might benefit from this information. Because it doesn't apply to everybody, but you never know who it might affect in the long run. Over here to the side, I have a couple, 3 other handouts, and I've got the Ready, Set, Go in a quick handout. And there are bookmarks, and there are Smokey the Bear, so if you've got children or grandchildren that you might want to pass some of that off to, please feel free to grab as much as you need. And I thank you for coming today, and I hope I gave you some information that might be of value to you somewhere down the line.
I have a question.
Yes?
How do you fix stupidity?
What did they say? You can't fix stupidity?
I mean, we're in a drought. I live up in outside city limits, but yet I'm next to a affluent neighborhood, and they're blowing off fireworks like it's their job.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know if I should turn on sprinklers or whatever.
Yes, yeah, you couldn't, at the least, it wouldn't have hurt anything. It might not have done any major thing, and you might have been safe all along, but it never hurts to think ahead of the game. I've got my hoses laid out. My neighbors one year, I got up and found fireworks in my yard. I was lucky, that's all I found. I didn't find burned grass. Our lady back here, who's been, is one of our directors, said, woke up on the 5th of July and found part of her yard burned out. And you just, there's your stupidity right there. And the thing about it is nobody checked to see where the fireworks went. She didn't know they were there. And then you wake up and find this. And the city put a ban on it. The city put fines on it. Now, where do you think the police officers were? Do you think they had time when you've got wrecks on the highway, when you've got drunk drivers out, and you know they're targeting drunk drivers because it's the 4th of July and there's your stupidity. So they're out there trying to chase them down, and it's gonna be hard, and unless they can come see where the damage was and know where it came from, unless you call and complain, nobody's gonna get ripped for it. And it puts a kibosh on you and the friendship with your neighbor next door when you say, hey, look at what you did to me.
I saw they had an emergency number for inside city limits.
Yes.
But nothing for outside.
Well, outside city limits is outside city limits, and that's why where those fireworks stands sit is outside.
Sheriff's office for all that.
Yeah, is outside city limits. I had nothing to do with it. My fence line runs right down Callahan-Taylor. I'm on the Taylor side, Callahan does what they want to do. Now, I'm not saying that negative, I'm just saying that their rules and regulations for their county are different than ours, I guess. Because otherwise, why would they have them? And my question was, why would they have them open to begin with, knowing that we've got the drought?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, one of the things to let you know, back in 2010, I did census work over in Midland. 11, we had the big drought. Midland had a very large wildfire that came in through the prairies because 2010 was a really good wet year for us. You know, we had 16, 18 inches of rain, so I mean, we had fields that had 3 foot tall grass. 11 comes, all that grass is now dead, never got eaten down or anything, and had the wildfire come, and it was blowing in straight into town. And so you have this big field that comes up, and it was going through one of the neighborhoods that I had done census work in. So after they got done with, putting out fire and all that, a week later I went through and looked at it. And I could go through on each of the houses and go, I remember this, what the house that used to be here. Because you'd go through and it would be, kind of a rundown neighborhood where you'd see a trailer house and, foot high grass, a couple of cars and stuff, just really not kept up. And you'd see a couple of these, and then you'd see one that somebody really took care of their yard. And then you'd see another one that wasn't taken care of. Those that weren't taken care of, burnt to the ground. I mean, you would see basically the rims of the car, and that was it. Everything else was gone. The houses that were well maintained, short grass, not even watered. I mean, you could tell the grass was dead because it was so dry, but it was short. It would be singed around the outside of the property, and the rest of the property was fine. I mean, you could literally go down house by house and see which ones had not maintained their yard. So if you keep your yard well maintained, it will help you. It may not save you, but it will at least help you drastically from having major issues a lot of times.
That's why they say a community is not the whole city of Abilene. It's next door to you and all around your house. So that's your community is around you.
Oh, I was just gonna mention that, how it was, but she gave up.
Okay,
Sir.
okay, thank you.
Ma'am, you had your hand up.
I was just gonna say, I guess this is just my opinion, if they were gonna allow fireworks, ban them in town, but not ban them out in the country, then we find the ones that could not shoot them in town. They go out in the country, and my daughter lives in Fullwater Road, which that fire got pretty close to her. She sent me a picture of it. Fortunately, they have a barn full of horses.
Mhm.
And she sent me a picture of it, and their field, the was one of the A&M planes dropping the
Yeah.
target on it. It's a really great picture, but it got close.
Well, and here's the other thing too, is those planes that are stationed out at the airport are to cover more than just this area. They cover other areas because this is a good hub for them to go from. If they're out fighting a fire over there, they're not over here fighting a fire over here. And that's why we all owe it to ourselves and to our neighbors to be careful of what we're doing. And I mean, it's great to give the kids a fireworks experience, but let's go, if we have to go somewhere where there's asphalt or cement, let's go do it where it's safe. But I know that it was printed that the fireworks in town could be like sparklers and firecrackers and things like that, but nothing aerial for the obvious reasons. I saw more aerials coming out of downtown than I did anywhere else. Because they had the fireworks over at the zoo, and that's a pretty safe place. They've got the fire department there, and they're on call so that they can take care of whatever was necessary. But even behind them, and even coming from over out of various different sections in town, I could see aerials coming up. And that was, they said no on that.
Here's the deal, I think it was a technicality, and I could be wrong, but my daughter went to buy fireworks, and she said, I said, well, just, make sure you get everything that's not banned, or, and he got all defensive. Nothing in this store is banned, but there were ones that shot up into the sky. But Ariel had some sort of wording definition. I think it was a technicality, something about like the ones that are on sticks or something.
Yeah, I think you have to, I think the aerial defines as stick or finned rockets.
Oh.
Not the ones, like they have those big round ones where they just shoot up
Yeah.
into the cylinders. Those were okay. But those were still going in the air.
Yeah, they still go in the air and they can still cause fires.
Yeah, and my backyard caught on fire, and I live in a residential area.
Yeah.
So,
And you don't know where they're
And I
coming
didn't
from,
shoot
but
fireworks, just saying.
yeah, like I said, my neighbor on the one side, I learned after that I kept my hoses out, so I knew that all I had to do was I've got one of those jack pumps, and I just went and turned that on, and it's already loaded, the hose is loaded. And yeah, I'm probably gonna wind up replacing a lot of hoses over the years, but you know what? They're out there and they're ready, and I'm ready to go. Because it's one of those things, insurance is funny on what it'll pay off and what it won't, but on a modular, it doesn't pay a whole heck of a lot. And so consequently, when you're losing your home and you're losing other things around you, and there's little or no replacement value on it, you have a tendency to be a little bit particular about how it's taken care of. And so you watch all that. And like I said, my bar ditch is probably one of the cleanest in town, because the first year, 2011, first year we're here, I'm watching a guy walking down the road and he's smoking, and I'm going, you ought not to be smoking around this tall grass. And mine was, it was this tall in the bar ditch. And I watched him flip it out, and I'm going, I grabbed a gallon of water that I happened to have for my indoor house plants, got my car and ran down there, and I was waiting and watching. Now, whether he had crushed it before he flipped it, I don't know. I never did find it, I never had a fire. But that's when I got the weed eater out, and it took me 4 days of 5 hours a day cleaning that place out so that it would be neat and clean. But I've kept it that way ever since, because like I said, and for all the work I did, it could come from a different direction. But at least I've done what I thought was reasonable to protect myself. And I cannot do anything about the other 3 fields on the other side of me, simply because the owners don't know, don't care. Here in town, if you've got something like that on a lot, city makes you clean it up. But out there, it's not governed that way. So, and until we all get together, those of us that are affected by it, and go down and talk to the powers that be, we are going to be in danger anyway. So, and some of these fires are not started on purpose, they're accidents.
Yeah.
But the one that they had when they had that fire out of town, it's got a big name. But while they were busy fighting that one, a guy was coming from town and watched a man dragging his chain, and about every other mile was starting a new fire. He didn't have a cell phone. He couldn't call anybody. He couldn't call the fire department, he couldn't call anybody. He had to get to the nearest house, because he was out in the country, to get a phone to be able to call, but he was starting a fire all the way down, and they were so short on fire trucks at the time. The only godsend was It was going from the ditch into a field, and there was nothing in the field and there was nothing on the other side. So they were fairly safe to that extent, but it was the idea, and the guy either didn't know or didn't care that his chains were dragging. But you don't understand what can cause it. Your lawnmower hits a rock, makes a spark. There are other things that you're using, and we all know about barbecues and fire pits and what have you. But other than that, I think I've talked long enough, ladies and gentlemen, so unless you have anything else.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon, and like I said, those books are your guides, but add your own notes.